Crisis opportunity number 8, use an opportunity radar. Especially in a time of crisis, it is even more important that you do not let your perception and your thinking be dominated too much by current events, not even in good times. In order for you to act more future intelligently, it would be good to increase the share of information about the future and, so to speak, from the future in your perceptions and your thinking. But you can often only see the future once you've already seen it. What does that mean? You are familiar with the effect. You've decided to buy a certain smartphone and you suddenly see it everywhere. Or you want to buy a new jacket and suddenly everyone is wearing it. And it works the same way with information about the future. If you've ever noticed a news story about 4D printing, solid-state batteries, or urbanization, you're much more likely to notice more information about these future factors. And with that, you'll think more about the future, and less about the past, and less about daily news that is only valuable for a couple of hours. Ideally, you would constantly feed and confront your brain with information about and from the future. This would make you a much more future-oriented person. Footnote: no, you would not become a Jack look in the air if you still know the story and figure of Heinrich Hoffmann. Okay, so just read more about the future, listen to more podcasts and watch more videos, right? Well, who is not overwhelmed by the countless sources for news and videos and podcasts? The good news is there is a solution for that. How do you keep track of the mass of trends and technologies and topics about the future? Now invest 15 minutes that will change your perceptions and with that your life from now on. Sounds exaggerated? Maybe, but I can almost guarantee that it's going to work for you. Take your smartphone and go to the Apple App Store or Google Play, find and install the app Feedly. Feedly is a so-called feed reader. It's not a new fancy thing, it's over 25 years old internet technology. A feed reader is a system for organizing news that constantly refills itself. It receives the feeds, which is the messages fed to it, and displays them in an orderly and pleasantly readable way. Also, by the way, references to new podcasts and videos. Feedly is free, and I have no connection to Feedly. And besides Feedly, there are of course many others, but Feedly is really good, and I use Feedly myself. So far, so nothing new. But what you as a future strategist do with it is different from what a feed reader is usually used for. You don't subscribe to any blogs and news channels, you subscribe to the feeds of futurists, research institutes, think tanks, technology websites, and futures websites. And I'll give you a list of good sources in the show notes to get you started. What do you get out of it? If you make Feedly on your smartphone, tablet, or PC the center of your daily news consumption, you can't help but notice much more about the changes and opportunities ahead. Much more than before, and far more than others. What? You don't have time for this? No time for your future? Okay, then read, listen, and watch less daily news. Like I said, they're only valuable for a couple of hours. Less of it is really worth it. Please be aware. You now have a very personal, very far and wide-looking, completely free personal radar for the future and for your opportunities. And by the way, this also works for your team and your entire company. You only have to divide up the future issues that the individual colleagues are to take on. What is also important here, don't just subscribe to feeds from sources you agree with and whose philosophy you like. You need to take a holistic view on the future. That's why you should also subscribe to future sources, depending on how you feel, which you consider too optimistic or too pessimistic, which you feel are too much or too little technological, which you regard as politically too far left or too far right. And this is the only way you can ensure that you will also identify the threats and potential surprises early on. And by the way, why do I call this an opportunity radar? Because you can always turn every piece of information about the future, even the worst future, into an opportunity if you detect it early. With a 15-minute investment, you've increased your future intelligence enormously. And from now on, you are a much more interesting person to talk to at dates and parties. Write me your comments and questions. I'm looking forward to them, and I will be happy to answer them. Have a bright future.